Oh, would you look at that? That sure looks like October to me, which can mean only one thing. I have to talk about spooky things that don't make me leave every light on in the house afterwards. No ghosts or ghouls or zombies, just video games being weird again. Over the years, we've told loads of stories that sound too strange to be true. Haunted cartridges, hidden scenes, games that were designed to drive people insane. These are the urban legends of gaming, the myths that make you question what's real, what's fake, and why we all kinda hope they aren't fake. Granted, if any of your consoles start talking to you, get that shit on eBay and never look back. It's someone else's problem now. Some of the creepiest things in life are the things you don't expect. A quiet room at 3 AM, a song that sounds slightly off, or a video game you've played hundreds of times suddenly showing you something you weren't meant to see. That's exactly how Sonic CD works. Not that this game was ever forthcoming with that information. Most people remember Sonic CD for its absolute bop of a soundtrack, and a time-traveling gimmick that still hurts my head, and yet hidden deep in its code is a bizarre little secret that has haunted unsuspecting players for decades. It's so hidden and obscure that the steps to get there read like an urban legend on their own. Like something you'd find in an old gaming magazine and have to convince your friends isn't just something you made up to mess with them. From the title screen, you give it a down, 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 left, right, A like a bootleg Konami code, and now you're at the sound test screen like a good little developer. Being here already feels wrong, since this kind of behind-the-scenes stuff wasn't as common as it is nowadays, but with criminal-grade code-breaking skills, you can make it all feel so much worse. Well, hasn't this just ruined my day? I don't exactly know why Sonic CD is hiding a strangely glitched image of all these Sonics with human-like faces, and the already very creepy boss music, and some text in Japanese, but I'd like it to go away now. There's a lot to unpack here, but the most interesting thing is how this Easter egg is completely different between versions. It uses the boss music for both, and in Japan, the regular boss music is really upbeat and happy, the sort of vibe that Sonic has been using for basically forever. Everywhere else got this version, which doesn't help make this anything other than the living nightmare that you've stumbled across by accident. It's uncanny in the extreme, with the added bonus of having no real purpose, which definitely doesn't help things. The Japanese on-screen translates to fun is infinite, which I'm sure has a different connotation when happy music is playing, but feels a lot more like purgatory with all the demonic laughing in the background. It is thankfully nothing more than an Easter egg, but it does play a little too well into the internet's preferred theory that something altogether more sinister is hiding in the code. Kids were having a hard enough time enjoying Sonic games without having to worry about hauntings or Satan or whatever. They just want to go fast, damn it. Old technology has a unique creepiness to it. I'd love to know the psychology behind it. Maybe they're creepy because they represent a snapshot of time that has been rendered obsolete by technological advancements, but I reckon there's mileage in how fragile they are. VHS tapes distort halfway through, cassette tapes tangle and become unusable, and game cartridges that you end up buying second-hand seem a little too worn down. Like they've had a rough life, and you're picking things up later in the story. Sometimes the scariest part isn't so much what's on screen, it's wondering who owned it before you. And when that game is The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask, a game that is already far too qualified at unnerving anyone who plays it, you have the perfect setup for one of the most terrifying urban legends in gaming history. As a story, Ben Drowned is old enough at this point for there to be people watching this video right now to have not been old enough at the time all of this was unfolding in 2010. Hell, that was half my life ago. The story goes that a player picked up a battered as hell copy of Majora's Mask at a garage sale and started playing it as normal, but soon things start getting weird. NPCs behave in unsettling ways, the music plays backwards, and creepy text boxes pop up with phrases like, "You shouldn't have done that." If you get that this version of Majora's Mask might be, at best, corrupted, or worst, haunted? Yeah, I get where you're coming from. The real terror comes from the save file itself, ominously titled Ben. No matter what the player does, Ben comes back. Any attempt to delete the file and even starting afresh seems to trigger more disturbing events. This version of Majora's Mask feels alive and almost angry. And when those mysterious figures of Link's drowned statue begin appearing, it only escalates from there. Ultimately, this is a creepypasta rather than a real thing that happened, but the use of in-game footage brings it to life in a way that hasn't been replicated all that often. Ben Drowned has spread across the internet thanks to its ability to blur fiction and reality together into this terrifying soup, with a side of intensely memorable quotes and moments. I don't think 15-year-old me ever thought this was real, but damn, something's not right here. That's all you need sometimes. Every online community seems to develop its own ghost stories. Chat rooms whisper of cursed usernames, early MMOs have stories of players who mysteriously vanished, and perhaps it was a sign of Minecraft's rapid rise in the early days that it latched onto this very quickly. And hey, that's weird, because Minecraft is supposed to be this ultra relaxing game. You chop some trees down, maybe you'll build a house, maybe you'll be blown up by a creeper, but then you get straight back to stacking blocks and exploring the world. But what if, imagine, hidden deep in your world there was something watching you the whole time? Something that shouldn't exist? Herobrine is prime-time urban legend shit. What we now know to not be real, possibly, just wasn't common knowledge way back when Minecraft was first gaining popularity. Who knows what the creators want to do with this game and what it could possibly be hiding. According to countless player stories, Herobrine looks like a normal player character, but has eyes that glow white and seem completely blank, like a ghostly figure. Players claim to spot him lurking at the edge of foggy forests, silently watching from a distance, before disappearing as soon as they get close. Other tales tell of messed up game worlds where Herobrine has dug miles of perfect tunnels through mountains, or stripped trees of all their leaves so that even if you never lay your eyes on the monster itself, you may just see what he leaves behind. Something is inside your game and it is toying with you. After a while, Mojang started to lean into the legend, culminating in some very famous patch notes that included the phrase, "removed Herobrine," which is, yes, a cheeky joke in its direction, but it doesn't do much for anyone's paranoia. Is this a joke, or was there something really hiding in the code? I need more, like, weird, creepy campfire stories from video games. The potential is limitless. Some urban legends don't need monsters or hidden bosses to scare people, sometimes all it takes is a single sound. Sound design in general is a huge deal in horror games since it aims to unsettle your senses and manipulate you into thinking that no corner is safe from the unspeakable horrors. And that's quite the achievement since most of us remember Pokémon as bright, cheerful and almost entirely harmless. You roam around, catching colourful creatures and becoming the very best. It's never more complicated than that. Except most of that isn't true, and Pokémon hides countless horrors in forgotten about corners, and also plain as day should the need arise. And when you're designing a graveyard town in your otherwise fairly cheerful video game for children, you tend to put the creepy stuff front and center. Lavender Town is where you're introduced to the concept of Pokémon dying, and not just fainting to the point of needing a trip to the Pokémon Center. The stakes are made a lot higher, and the world building has just been darkened a tad, so now's the perfect time for some eerie music to cap everything off. Game Freak has never made something like Lavender Town again. This strange, out-of-place location with a few major story beats, but no gym to challenge your skills against. Instead, it's home to one of the most unusual songs on the first-generation soundtrack, and with it, the stories rumbled in that it used to be even more unusual. Back before Pokémon had swam the oceans to make its way to the Western world, it was supposedly making waves in Japan because of what Lavender Town's music was doing to children. When the game first released, children who played it while hearing the original, harsher, even more droning version of Lavender Town started to suffer headaches, nausea, and, depending on which version you read, something far worse. This story spread across the internet and, at some point, picked up on the idea of hidden frequencies being in the music, tones that only children could hear, which were messing with their heads. Some accounts talk of Unknown turning up in spectrographs of the song, spelling out "Leave Now" or something similar. There are even versions that claim that Nintendo were in cahoots with the Japanese government and were testing out experimental techniques. At some point, we do veer completely away from any kind of truth and into a ditch, but Lavender Town is kinda fucked up, there's no denying it. I don't think any kids in Japan suffered any ill effects, but there is some precedent for that, given that the Pokemon anime was putting 600 kids in the hospital around about the same time. What it is a surprisingly unsettling location and soundtrack for a kids game, and so out of place that it left a huge impression on those who played it. Sometimes you're looking for an explanation, and rumours fill in the blanks. That's all it takes. Occasionally, legends don't just stay on the screen, they spill out into the real world. Or at least, that's how the story goes. The most infamous urban legend in all of gaming history is of course Polybius, and to talk about it properly we have to go all the way back to the early 1980s. That in itself shows its strength as an urban legend, that we are at least 40 years down the road from when everything happened, and it's still a significant episode in video game history that is worth talking about in big old 2025. You have heard of this, but in case you somehow haven't, Polybius tells a story of a mysterious arcade cabinet that appeared in Portland, Oregon at the start of the 80s. It didn't have the same mass appeal as something like Pac-Man, but it did have visuals so strange and trippy that they would cause headaches, memory lapses, and the occasional seizure. Supposedly, men in black suits would periodically take data away from the machine, which fed into the conspiracy that some level of governmental experiments were being done here. It's compelling stuff for sure, and it makes for a superb urban legend, but it does struggle to provide any real evidence. There's a few whispers in some old gaming magazines that may or may not have been hoaxes or April Fool's pranks, but the reason why it's so exciting as a mystery is because it feeds into pre-existing paranoia. Video games were a new concept in the 80s, and there was a lot of concern from parents that kids were spending too much time in arcades, or that games were promoting physical violence. Some arcade games were triggering epileptic seizures, and Berserk famously killed a teenager in 1982 when his heart gave out while playing it. The distrust in new technology, plus it being an uncertain time in American history, MKUltra only wrapped up about a decade prior to when Polybius was said to be around, naturally led to this really interesting level of hearsay about gaming urban legends. Information that couldn't be verified because the internet wasn't much of a thing and people just believed what they read or saw. And it's not like we've moved much past it nowadays. AI is so convincing now that the truth is being obscured more than ever, and if you decide that there's an arcade game out there that is testing certain sound or light frequencies, then you can make that convincing. These are unpredictable times, but that can give rise to the mystery, and they can be pretty thrilling.